There's a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when you wake up one morning, look around your familiar home, and think to yourself, is this it? Is this all there is left for me now? You don't say it out loud. You just breathe it, in the hush of the kitchen, while waiting for the kettle to boil, or folding the same towels you folded 1,000 times. You're 75. Or maybe 78. Or maybe you stopped counting, because birthdays stopped feeling like beginnings a long time ago. You've done the shoulds of life. You worked, you raised, you supported, you endured. And now there's a stillness. Not always peaceful. Sometimes it's like a question hanging in the air. What am I supposed to do with this life now? But before we go further, let's pause here, because this moment, this question, this quiet ache you feel right now, it matters. You see, most people will tell you, it's too late. You've had your time. You should be grateful, not restless. Just enjoy what's left. But what if they're wrong? What if this stillness isn't an end, but a doorway? What if that ache in your chest isn't sorrow, but the first flicker of possibility? Let me ask you something gently, as if we were sitting together across a warm cup of tea. What if you're not too old to start again? What if you're finally just old enough to do it your way? You see, starting over isn't just for the young. The young are just loud about it. They rebrand, they relocate, they declare it on social media. But you've lived enough to start over quietly, intentionally, truthfully. Not because you have to, but because you finally can. Because the expectations have faded. Because the roles have loosened. Because now, for the first time and maybe forever, you're allowed to ask, what would I choose now if I didn't owe anyone an answer? This part of life, the one you were told is about settling down, letting go, slowing in, might actually be the part where you return to yourself. And no, you don't need to pack a bag and move to a new country. Starting over doesn't always look like reinvention. Sometimes it's just the decision to stop performing, to stop pleasing, to stop pretending, to start listening to you. In the next part, we'll talk about the lie you've been told, that past a certain age, you're meant to disappear quietly. But you and I both know something else is waking up in you. Let's go there, together. Let's be honest about something painful. It's not just age that makes people feel stuck. It's the messages, whispered, spoken, implied, that they've heard for decades. It starts subtly. You're not as fast as you used to be. Maybe let the younger folks handle that. Isn't it time to slow down? You've done enough. Just rest. And on the surface, these words sound kind, like care, like respect, like relief. But underneath, they carry a weight, a quiet suggestion that says, you've passed your peak, now you're just coasting. No one says it directly. They don't have to. You see it in the way people talk around you, not to you. You feel it when your ideas are met with polite smiles. You hear it when you're described as sweet instead of sharp, as wise but never capable. And over time, it starts to stick. Not just to your skin, but to your soul. You stop dreaming, you stop daring, you stop choosing. Because somewhere deep down, a seed was planted. This is no longer your season. But let me tell you a truth society often forgets. Just because something is quiet doesn't mean it's over. Just because something is slower doesn't mean it's less powerful. Just because you've seen more years doesn't mean your best ones are behind you. You are not a withering tree. You are a mountain, steady, strong, and still growing from within. They said starting over is for the young. But youth often lacks the one thing you now carry in your bones: clarity. You've lived, you've loved, you've lost, you've survived. And in that survival, you've gathered something sacred, the ability to know what matters, what doesn't, and what you're no longer willing to waste time on. So why wouldn't you be the perfect person to begin again? Why wouldn't now, when the noise has quieted, when the demands have softened, when the masks have fallen, be the most powerful time to start truly living? Society tells a lie to keep things in order. It says the young are for becoming, the old are for remembering. But you don't fit in that cage. Not anymore. You are not here just to look back. You're here to look in. and from that place to move forward, even if just one step. So the next time someone says, well, at your age, you can smile gently and think, exactly. At my age, I finally get to choose for me. In the next part, we'll meet real stories, people who didn't accept the lie, who rewrote their lives after 70, 75, even 80. And in them you might see your own spark, quietly waiting. We often think that starting over requires something dramatic, a new job, a new house, a new love. But sometimes the most powerful kind of starting over is deeply quiet, personal, invisible to the world but undeniable to the soul. Let me tell you about Eleanor, who began again at 78. She had spent over 5 decades married to the same man. They'd built a life, stable, respectable, predictable. She raised 3 children, made every dinner from scratch, ironed shirts, watered plants, remembered birthdays. She was the anchor everyone else leaned on. And then one winter, her husband passed away in his sleep. The children came for the funeral. They hugged her, made her tea, promised to visit, and then they left. Eleanor sat in a house full of silence. The television played in the background, but it couldn't fill the hollow space. One morning, she opened the hallway closet, and something fell at her feet. An old wooden box filled with watercolor paints. She hadn't seen them in years. They still smelled like childhood. She stared at the box for a long time. Then, without really thinking, she poured herself a glass of water, found a scrap of paper, and painted a single daisy. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like breath. That afternoon, she painted again, then the next day and the next. By the end of the month, her fridge was covered in colors. She walked to the public library and shyly signed up for a senior art class. She was the oldest one there. She was also the most alive. Today at 82, Eleanor's paintings hang in a local cafe. She teaches beginners how to express grief, joy, and memory through watercolor. And she says, often with a little smile, it took me nearly 80 years to remember what my own hands could create. Next, meet Harold, age 74. A retired linguistics professor, Harold lived alone in a tidy brick house. His life was a series of routines. Eggs at 7 a.m., newspaper at 7:30, crossword by 10. He wore beige sweaters, liked silence, and believed his meaningful years were behind him. Until one fall afternoon, he read a small story in the paper about a family of refugees from Syria. They had arrived in town with no English, 3 children under 10, and no community. Harold folded the paper. Something in his chest stirred. Old, uncomfortable, persistent. The next week, he walked to the community center. He offered to teach English, just one afternoon a week. He was nervous at first. What if he didn't connect with them? What if they thought he was too old? But when he walked into the room and saw those children, eyes wide, hands folded, ready to learn, something inside him cracked open. He didn't just teach them English, he told them jokes. He listened to their stories, he became their friend. Harold now volunteers 3 days a week. He's learned greetings in Arabic. He's been invited to more home-cooked meals than he's had in years. And recently he said something that surprised even himself. I thought I'd closed my classroom door forever. Turns out I just needed a new kind of student. And then there's Maria, who started over at 76 by walking away. She had been the perfect grandmother, holiday dinners, birthday gifts, babysitting on weekends. But after her husband died and her children got busy, she felt something she didn't dare say aloud. She was exhausted. She didn't want to host Thanksgiving anymore. She didn't want to sleep in a house filled with old memories. She wanted peace. So she did something no one expected. She sold the family home, packed only what she needed, and moved to a tiny wooden cabin by a lake. 2 hours away. It was quiet, it was small, it was completely hers. At first, her children were confused. Are you okay, Mom? Do you need help? But over time, they saw it too. She smiled more. She napped in hammocks. She wrote poems no one read but herself. She planted basil, baked bread, sat by the lake, and listened to birds. Maria says, for 40 years I asked what everyone else needed. now? I ask myself. These stories are not about making headlines. They're not about wealth or fame or reinvention. They're about remembering that you are allowed, at any age, to want more. To choose peace, to do something just for you. Maybe your new beginning won't look like theirs. Maybe it's as simple as joining a choir, writing a journal, telling someone no for the first time in years. Whatever it is, it counts. You count. And maybe you're not starting over. You're just beginning for the very first time. A truth we were never taught, but always needed. By now, you might be wondering, does starting over mean I have to change everything? Move away? Learn a new skill? Find a new partner? Is that what this is all about? The answer is no. And also, maybe. Because here's something no one tells us when we're older. Starting over doesn't have to, it just has to be real. Let's sit with that for a moment. Starting over doesn't mean wiping the slate clean. It's not erasing the past. Your memories, your mistakes, your love, your pain. Those are sacred. Starting over means reclaiming your right to choose differently today than you did yesterday. It means looking at your life with open eyes and finally asking, is this still working for me? Do I want to keep living this way? And if the answer is no, you begin again. Sometimes it's in a decision as small as moving your chair to face the sun in the morning. Eating breakfast slowly instead of rushing. Calling a friend you've grown distant from. Taking off the "I'm fine" mask, even for just 1 hour. Sometimes it's in the courage to admit you no longer want to carry certain expectations, that you don't enjoy the book club anymore, that you'd rather take long walks alone than attend church socials, that you want to stop being the strong one in the family and just be human. Because starting over is not about becoming someone else. It's about returning to who you were before the world told you who to be. It's peeling back the layers of roles, responsibilities, reputations, and asking quietly, what is left when no one is watching? That answer, however soft, however uncertain, is your new beginning. You see, we were taught that starting over requires a bang. But at this age, you know better. You know that the softest shifts often cause the biggest changes, like saying no, like resting without guilt, like giving yourself permission to not explain anymore. You don't need anyone's approval to begin again. You don't need a plan or a title or a goal. You just need presence, a willingness to say, I want more life in the time I have left. And that more? It doesn't have to be big. It can be sitting on your porch every evening, watching the sunset without checking your phone. It can be drinking coffee with both hands and no schedule. It can be learning the names of the birds outside your window. Small beginnings, soft rebellions, quiet acts of truth. That is starting over. And maybe you're not lost. You're just walking home to yourself for the first time in decades. In the next part, we'll talk gently and honestly about how to begin, what to do when you feel unsure, where to find strength when you feel tired, and why you don't have to do it alone, because the path is not gone. It's just been waiting for you to say, I'm ready. Because starting over at 75 doesn't look like starting over at 25. And that's the beauty of it. So let's say something inside you stirred while watching this. Maybe a memory, a hunger, a quiet grief for all the versions of yourself you set aside to be who the world needed. You're not alone. In fact, you're right where many have stood, on the edge between existing and living again. So how do you begin? Not with pressure, not with urgency, but with gentleness. Here are 4 ways to start over, softly, realistically, and most of all, honestly, at 75 or beyond. 1. Start with one honest question. Not what should I do with my life? That's too big, too vague, too overwhelming. Instead, try this. What do I miss about myself? Maybe you miss how you used to sing while cooking. Maybe you miss writing letters. Maybe you miss the long, slow mornings before your life became about everyone else. Write it down, 1 sentence, that's all. That sentence is a beginning. You don't need a grand purpose. You need a true desire. even a quiet one. 2. Reclaim a space that belongs to you. If you've spent your life sharing space with a partner, children, responsibilities, or expectations, then maybe now is the time to carve out a physical corner just for you. It could be a chair by the window, a small garden patch, a drawer with your journals, a music player and headphones. That space says, "This is mine, and I matter." It doesn't have to be productive. It just has to feel like you. And when you sit in that space, let the silence be filled with listening, not planning. 3. Change something small, on purpose. Many people think starting over means overhauling everything. But that's not how the soul works. The soul shifts through symbols. So change one thing, intentionally. Move your bed to face a different wall. Start ending your day with a candle lit in the dark. Wear a color you haven't worn in years. Eat dinner outside. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is this: you did it because you wanted to. That's freedom. 4. Tell one person the truth. Not everyone. Maybe it's a friend, a sibling, your grown child, or even a letter you write to someone who's no longer here, or to yourself. Tell them, "I want to feel more alive. I want to change something. I don't want to stay stuck." Saying it out loud or writing it makes it real. You don't need a solution, you need a witness. And sometimes the act of being seen is the beginning of everything. Bonus, forgive yourself for the delay. Yes, you could have started earlier. Yes, you wish you had, but you didn't. And you're here now. That's not failure, that's arrival. You were surviving, caring, enduring, and now, for the first time in a long time, you're choosing. That's enough. You are enough. So don't wait for the perfect plan. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for certainty. The door isn't locked. It was never locked. You just needed the quiet to hear your own knock. In the next part, we'll reflect on what's waiting on the other side of this choice. What life can feel like when you finally begin again. Not out of desperation, but out of deep, earned courage. It's not about changing your whole life. It's about finding the part that was waiting for you all along. What happens after you start over? Not the dramatic kind of starting over. Not the movie version. The quiet one. The gentle shift. The one that begins in your chest like a warm hum. What does life look like when you finally say, "I want to live on my own terms now"? Let me tell you, it doesn't become perfect. You'll still forget things. Your knees will still ache. There will still be days when you feel uncertain. But something changes, profoundly. You begin to feel light again. Not the kind of light that comes from youth or energy or excitement, but a deeper light. The kind that comes from finally putting down all the roles you were never meant to carry so long. You stop performing. You start choosing. You stop waiting to be invited. You start creating your own moments. You laugh, really laugh, not because something is funny, but because you suddenly realize, I don't owe anyone an explanation anymore. You wake up and no longer dread the silence. You begin to crave it. You walk slower, not because you're old, but because you finally know how to savor. You start doing things not for praise, not for duty, not for tradition, but because they bring you peace. And perhaps the most beautiful change of all, you start to feel like yourself again. Not the version of you from 20 years ago. Not the one your family sees, not the one you showed the world, but the you that was always quietly waiting beneath it all. And once you touch that part of yourself again, everything else begins to make sense. The past stops haunting you, the future stops scaring you, and this present moment becomes enough. You begin to live without needing to prove anything to anyone. And that, my dear friend, is freedom. If you're still watching this, maybe something in your heart is saying, I want that too. So let me ask you gently, what part of yourself do you want to return to? Is it joy, curiosity, peace, silence, laughter? Whatever it is, write it in the comments. Yes, really. Pause for a moment and let this be the first act of your new beginning. Say it out loud. Share it. Be seen. And if this video made you feel less alone, if it gave you a breath of clarity, a moment of hope, or even just a quiet yes, then I invite you to follow this channel, Golden Pathways. We're building a space where age isn't the end of anything. It's the beginning of everything true. And you belong here. So follow for more. And leave a comment. What do you still long for? Even now. You're not too old. You're just in the season where everything real finally begins.